Microlecture 14. The Tokugawa Shogunate. In the 12th century, Japan entered an era dominated by military rulers known as shoguns. These military feudal dictators dominated the country between 1185 and 1868. In the early modern period, one of the most important shogunates was the Tokugawa. The Tokugawa emerged after the end of the Sengoku period, a civil war that lasted from 1467 to 1615. The founder of the shogunate was Tokugawa Ieyasu in 1603. The Tokugawa shogunate that Ieyasu fashioned lasted until 1867. This era is also called the Edo period, after the location of the shogunate in the city of Edo, which is present-day Tokyo. The stability and peace achieved by the Tokugawa brought a steady rise in Japan's population. To achieve this stability, they froze social status. The lesser class, known as daimyo, was a group of military lords who controlled the territory but were not allowed to move troops outside their frontiers, make alliances, or coinage money. Samurai and peasants were kept strictly apart. Samurai were defined as those permitted to carry swords. Prohibited from owning land, they live in castles and they depend on stipends from their lords, the daimyo. Likewise, merchants and artisans had to live in towns and could not own land. After 1639, the Japanese rulers decided to limit the country's contact with the outside world. They were threatened by the European powers and their imperialist attitudes, but also did not want the people to convert to Christianity, which was something that was happening due to the actions of the missionaries. Despite not wanting to engage with the Europeans, the Japanese continued having relations with the Chinese because they were an important trading partner and a good source of ideas. The Edo period also saw the development of a native learning school that rejected Buddhism and Confucianism as alien and tried to identify a distinctively Japanese sensibility. In the 17th century, samurais, farmers, and adventurers began to move to the cities. As a result, urban spaces grew tremendously. Kyoto became a center for the manufacture of luxury items like lacquer, brocade, and fine porcelain. Osaka was the chief market, especially for rice. Edo was a center for consumption by the daimyo, their vassals, and government bureaucrats. Both Osaka and Edo reached about 1 million residents. Besides big cities, more than 250 towns were founded in this period. Most of these towns were between 3,000 and 20,000 people, but a few, such as Hiroshima, Kagoshima, and Nagoya, had between 65,000 and 100,000 people. In addition, perhaps 200 towns along the main road to Tokyo emerged to meet the needs of men traveling on the alternate residence system. In the 18th century, perhaps 4 million people, 15% of the Japanese population, reside in cities or towns. The Tokugawa shoguns brought an end to civil war by controlling the military. Stripped of power and required to spend alternate years at Edo, many of the daimyo and samurai passed their lives in idle pursuit of pleasure. They spent a lot of money on paintings, concubines, the theater, and castles. These temptations and more sophisticated pleasures and the high cost of maintaining alternative residences at Edo gradually bankrupted the warrior class. All major cities had places of amusement for men, tea houses, theaters, restaurants, and houses of prostitution. Poor women worked in these places, and the most attractive and talented girls trained in singing, dancing, and conversational arts, becoming courtesans later called geishas. The Tokugawa period is well known for its print culture. The art of color woodblock printing was perfect during this period. The public eagerly purchased fiction and scripts for plays. Writers like Ihara Saikaku composed famous books like Women Who Love Love. Other authors, such as Chimakatsu Monzaemon, were also recognized and important. The shogunate prohibited most travel by commoners, but people could get passports to take pilgrimage, visit relatives, or seek the soothing waters of medicinal hot springs. Traveling by foot, groups of villagers will visit religious shrines or big cities. During the late 17th century and the early 18th century, the upper classes paid for their luxury lifestyles by raising peasants' taxes. As a consequence, revolts in the countryside were common. During this era, several natural disasters were recorded. In 1783, Mount Asama erupted, and as a consequence of the ashes, the country experienced a famine that lasted more than 4 years. That famine was an exception, since during the whole Tokugawa period, agricultural surplus was the norm. Peasants also worked manufacturing silk, cotton, or vegetable oil. Compared to farmers, merchants had a much easier life, even if they had no political power. Within a village, some families would be relatively well off, others barely able to get by. The village headman generally came from the wealthiest families, but he counseled a council of elders about important matters. Women in wealthy and middle classes families were much likely to learn to read than women in low-income families. For rich women, poetry and travel were common. For the poor, moral education was the norm. Confucian ideals influenced women's lives, so filial piety and respect for the elders were key. Women were expected to listen and obey their husbands. For the most part, Japan was ethnically and religiously homogeneous, so by the mid-18th century, the shogunate easily controlled the population under a prosperous and unified centralized government. The Tokugawa shoguns were important for Japan's history because at a crucial time they were able to regulate trade, agriculture, foreign relations, and religion. Their impact was remarkable and they continue to be remembered as one of Japan's greatest dynasties. This is all I have for you today. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.